Perfect. Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, wherever you are. Welcome and joining our webinar today. We'll go ahead and get started in just a minute. We'll just wait a little bit longer while more of you join in. I'm in Toronto and it's very rainy and cloudy today, although I know that we're all hopeful that the weather will warm up sometime soon, hopefully. Perfect. Great. Okay, we're just in a minute after or so. I think we might as well go ahead and get started. If we have anyone else joining, they can definitely join us after the fact. But like I said, hello, everyone. Happy Thursday. I hope everyone's having a lovely week so far. We've almost made it to Friday. We're almost there. So my name is Hannah Kaploon. I'm the project coordinator at PLEAC. I'm located here in Toronto, Ontario, and I would like to acknowledge the land I and others joining us today are on. It's the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. I also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. Today, I encourage all of you to take some time to reflect on the land you are residing on. And since we have individuals watching from across different provinces and territories, I think that's especially important just to take some of that time for yourself today. On another note, to introduce why we're all here today, thank you so much for joining us for PLEAC's webinar on guided pathways. The breadth of knowledge on guided pathways varies quite a bit. Some are experts in the field, others have never heard of it at all. But luckily, we do have some fantastic speakers today who will introduce their guided pathways and give us some insight into this topic. Our speakers are Candice Lee, Manager of Digital Delivery at Legal Aid BC. We have Erik Bornmann, Managing Lawyer of Online Interactive Projects at Community Legal Education Ontario, or CLEO. And we have Jocelyn Gagne, Leader Writer at the Public Legal Education Association of Saskatchewan. The bios were circulated in an email about our speakers as well as the organizations themselves. And it was included a little bit in the registration process too. So if you haven't read this or seen it, definitely encourage you to take a look and check it out in a little bit more detail. Obviously, we're saving a bit of time today, so we'll go ahead and I'll just give a few more points on administrative end before I pass it along to the speakers. So this session is being recorded. As usual, everyone will receive the link to the recording after the webinar is done. It will also be posted on PLEAC's website, so stay tuned for that. Something new for PLEAC a little bit is there will be a very brief survey at the end of the webinar. Just take a minute out of your day to complete it, and it will follow up in another email if you don't have the time today, but it is fairly short, and this will help us to improve our programming as we move forward as well. And finally, any questions you might have during the webinar, please feel free to use the Q&A button or the chat function throughout this entire webinar at any point. Go ahead and submit those because the speakers will be answering any questions, comments, feedback at the end of the webinar. So whatever time we have left and whatever we can get to, we will at the end. But during the webinar, if anything pops into mind, feel free to submit that. So without further ado, so I don't have to talk any further, I will take it, get Candice to take it away and go right ahead.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Hannah. I'll share my screen first. Let me know if you get it okay.
Looks great.
Great, thank you. So Hannah, thanks for the invite, and fellow presenters, Jocelyn and Erik, nice to connect. And glad to be with you all today. I'll start by acknowledging with respect, I'm working from home in the city of New Westminster, located in the unceded traditional territory of the Coast Salish people of Ketchikan and Coquitlam First Nation in British Columbia. Founded over 40 years ago, Legal Aid BC is a nonprofit organization that provides legal information, advice, and representation to people on low income. For years, we've been monitoring the digital transformation on service delivery. It is our strategy to get ahead of the transition and contribute in shaping it. Our core strategy had twofold: put the tools to solve everyday problems in the pockets of ordinary people and help change the way service providers support their clients to catch up with the fast-paced digital evolution. What prompted LABC to dive into building MyLawBC in 2014? There's tons of amazing legal resources out there, but research has shown that people find the amount of information available overwhelming, leads to trust issues. Take our own example, the family law website. We have over 1,000 pages. For someone who doesn't know the law or in emotional turmoil, this is intimidating. Besides, like in many jurisdictions, self-represented litigants in BC face huge challenges when navigating the law in a justice system created for lawyers. MyLawBC is a response to this problem. We have two products, Guided Pathway and Online Family Resolution. I'll focus on the pathway today. By definition, Guided Pathway asks users a series of questions that help them refine, define, or select the legal issue they are facing, and then provide them with information that is tailored to their needs. The key here is to give people just what they need when they need it. MyLawBC is legal information, not legal advice. To do it right, the legal information created have to be carefully chosen, thoughtfully organized, dynamic enough to cover issues broadly that is relevant to the majority of ordinary folks. After completing a pathway, a summary of actionable information and resources will be automatically generated. Users could download in PDF or print off screen. It can be a safety plan or a foreclosure action plan. We've created 8 guided pathways in 4 subject areas. I'll go over them briefly. On issues around divorce and separation, we have 3 pathways. Make a separation plan, help you figure out the best way for you and your ex to work together and create a separation agreement. Get family orders, help you get a court order, figure out which court, interim or final order, how to apply, and where to get help. The third one is I've been served with a court document. Help you figure out your next step if you've been served. You can get through these pathways in about 15 to 25 minutes. Separation can be a vicious circle between legal and personal problems. We take on a holistic approach with practical tools and emotional support. Coping with separation on the right and negotiation toolkit help de-escalate issues for separating couples while restructuring their families. The negotiation toolkit is a well-used online resource. An adaptation with permission from J.P. Boyd. We have 20 different versions of the kit, but users only see the one that touches on information relevant to their issues. For domestic violence, we have made a safety plan, help users think about their relationship with their intimate partner and consider the safety risk. It explains the different types of abuse and address how they can stay safe and get the help they need. At the end, the pathway generates a safety plan to help them and their children. If you need to find out if you can keep your home, you can look into this missed mortgage payment pathway. This helps users orient themselves in the foreclosure process and gives them information that may help them keep their home. This pathway has important information for people who are at risk of foreclosure, as well as those already being foreclosed on. Taking 20 minutes, this plan for the future pathway helps users identify the legal documents they need to plan now for a future if they can act independently. Most often, this involves choosing someone who will act on their behalf. Here we introduce all the different documents and help people choose the correct one. The Make a Will pathway is the most used. It helps people make a simple will that reflects their wishes and fits their situation. You learn about important decisions you need to consider when making a will and get an easy-to-use form you can complete to have a legal will. A point worth noting, none whatsoever of the user's answers in this or any other pathways mentioned earlier are retained by the system after users have left the site. MyLaw BC was launched in May 2016. We have some status to share. Up to March 2021, we have had more than 266,000 visits to the site. The MyLaw BC pages have been viewed more than 1.8 million times. Pages in the wills pathway were seen over 52,000 times. More than 22,000 people learned about getting a separation plan, and over 600 couples have used the dialogue tool to work together on a separation agreement. After the initial launch, our job is not done. The team continued to study and respond to the user's experience. Here is a picture taken during a moderated in-person session. A consultant spent 45 minutes with a user in a room, gave her a task to work through, and asked her to talk out loud about challenges while clicking through. Same time, in another room, our content team and management team, including myself, watched the interactions unfold with a third party taking notes. It was a valuable experience for the team to see firsthand and listen to users' candid feedback, both verbal and nonverbal, from long pauses, curious looks to animated joy. This is what a user had to say, describing the family separation pathway. This isn't a counseling session, she laughed. I'm going to find some answers. By learning directly from end users, this makes us a better champion for user-centric design. Over 60% of users participated. They find the site manageable and easy to use. About a year into our launch, with feedback from users and community advocates, we did a plain language edit to make the site content reader level suitable for junior high. This is what a user will get at the end of a pathway. To empower them to take action to solve their problems, we have this 5-step to-do list. I've added the numbering circle above the button for easy reference. Number 1, summary. To double check you've answered everything correctly. Read first, important background information. Do now, steps you can take right now. Do next, what you will need to do after those first steps. Get more help, list people and resources that could help. This endpoint ending page is welcomed by users and tested well. Here is another comment we heard. I was impressed by the PDF generation. It was just cool. In addition to in-person testing, we too conduct e-survey and online testing using a .com app. In the fall of 2019, we completed 2 evaluation reports. We are pleased with the findings. 71% of users, they took some of the steps in the action plan. 25 retained counsel, and 42 used free legal advice service, like a family duty counsel, advice lawyers, or family law line. And you can find these reports on the LABC website. As the project manager of MyLaw BC since day 1, I can testify that our journey was characterized by trial and error. Some lessons learned to share. How to find the voice for our clients. In November 2014, we spent 6 months working to build consensus with lawyers mediators, and legal information organizations, service providers, and other subject matter experts. Initially, we did experience some kind of resistance from the justice stakeholders. People felt threatened and had concerns about the introduction of these technology-assisted components. Back then, we didn't have a lot of experience in web development. For publishing workflow, our norm was to kickstart any publication with a blueprint meeting of stakeholders, subject matter experts, and project team. Once we have the manuscript ready, we then go through editing, design, legal review before we hit the road to get feedback from our target audience through focus groups. End users are brought in at a very late stage. However, with MyLaw BC online platform, we invited legal aid clients to take part in our Scrum meetings right at the get-go. It took a lot of work to encourage legal experts to be patient and listen to what the user wants. At the time, this change in approach had been a shock to some staff, but we felt the process was necessary and proven to be transformative. We are doing things very differently across the organizations now. We consult with people who use our service, whether it's through journey mapping, storytelling workshop, creating and using persona, UX, user experience prototyping, and many rounds of user testing. We practically co-create our online products with our users. Lesson learned number 2, prototype to test feasibility. MyLaw BC began in 2014 after our CEO came across Rechtwijzer, an online dispute resolution platform for divorce cases in the Netherlands. We absolutely support the notion to take a leadership role in our sector by leveraging emerging technologies. However, the differences between jurisdictions had a significant impact on the development of tools to explain the law. Although there are some similarities between the Netherlands and Canada, individuals in the Netherlands are never required to represent themselves, and there are 2 distinct court systems in Canada rather than one in the Netherlands. This means that adapting the Rechtwijzer platform to the Canadian context took much more time than had been anticipated. Besides, there are challenges involved in adopting technical tools developed in other countries. The very fact that we picked the platform first and then fitted in content and user needs caused issues. We ran into quite a bit of pain points in terms of knowledge and skill sets. With loads of patience, we pulled it off. Happy ending. But in hindsight, we would start one pathway rather than doing all 8 at the same time. We held several rounds of postmortem to establish understandings. Nowadays, before committing to any of the proposed technologies, we honed in on our business requirements, conduct feasibility research, and create prototypes. While some technical solutions are desirable, even feasible, they could be difficult or costly to maintain. In designing and developing future state e-apps, such as the modernization of our mobile online access to legal aid services, we adopt a test and learn agile approach to creating a simple first version with a view to scale up and build on steady success over time. Lesson learned number 3, we designed for a multitude of legal journeys. Through MyLaw BC project, it's clear to us that no 2 pathways, no 2 paths are alike, just as there's no single legal service provider or source of legal information. Our role is just one of many stops in a person's legal journey. We didn't want a person's situation, abilities, location, or economic status to determine whether they could access legal information. We now create user flows to help us understand how users might access legal information and how our staff could support that channel. We also use process diagrams a lot to walk us through possible scenarios to inform our tool assessment or technical solution selection. The last lesson learned shared today is how to make content easier to understand for users. Post-launch user testing of the pathway with real users taught us a lot. When we listened in and saw as a group on how users struggle to click an answer or to make sense of the pathway flows, it was a very humbling experience to our writers, editors, and subject matter experts collectively. Using legal jargon while writing about the law is inevitable. While we try to make plain language content, further strides can be made in the name of accessibility, particularly for clients with lower literacy. During those COVID months, we did trim content and site refresh to ensure our pathway are easy and fast for users to digest. These content updates also contribute to improving the search experience and discoverability for the pathway. One of our guiding principles is to empower users, make the protection of law accessible to ordinary people early on. We embrace that a digital ecosystem is comprised of the people, data, system, processes, and products that when used together, achieve common goals. Note that people always come first. With technology growing in light speed, the world is shrinking by the minute. Sharing our ideas with you today is a great next step to continue to create a wider net of our journey to extend access to justice for all. Thank you.
That's great, Candice. Thank you so much for that presentation. That's wonderful. We're going to go straight to Erik.
Thank you, Hannah. And Hannah and I are both situated in usual times in the same office, but we are both in the city of Toronto. So thank you. My name's Erik Bornmann, and I will be providing an overview of CLEO's Guided Pathways program. Let's get myself sorted out here. And Hannah, I'm looking at you. Am I successfully sharing my screen?
That looks great, Erik.
So for those of you that don't know CLEO, Community Legal Education Ontario, since 1974, CLEO has developed clear, accurate, and practical legal education and information to help people understand and exercise their legal rights. Our work focuses on providing information to people who face barriers to accessing the justice system, including income, disability, literacy, and language. CLEO's work includes guided pathways, which are online interactive tools that help people complete legal forms, legal documents, and find legal information tailored to their situation. CLEO's guided pathways are used creating a software called A2J Guided Interviews. We design decision trees comprised of simple questions. The software features a character that guides the user through that decision tree using the answers to each question. Information collected along the way is then used to fill out the necessary legal documents and to present public legal information. Following the decision tree, the pathways take people through a logical series of plainly stated questions, one at a time. This one question at a time approach serves to break difficult concepts into smaller pieces. People only see a question if it applies to their situation. People often require help understanding the implications of their answers. We integrate easy to understand legal information into the questions. So in each question, we aim to present legal information that is relevant to the situation. The guided pathways also help organize people's information for their forms using logic rules. These rules can also verify some information for internal consistency and formatting. Another way the tool helps is by streamlining data entry. Information used on many forms is only entered once. Depending on the situation, the pathways will prompt people to complete additional forms, like in the instance of a family law matter, say financial statements. This can often be done using follow-up pathways, which reuse any data the user has already entered. At the end, the pathways output the applicable court forms, if that's what the output is, or other form populated using the inputs. Most guided pathways will output all the forms necessary for a particular step or process. Once downloaded, the forms can then be edited in Word or Adobe Reader. The pathways can also provide a next steps checklist tailored to their situation, along with detailed instructions, for instance, about how to file their court forms. The guided pathways are accessible from CLEO's Steps to Justice website. Steps to Justice provides people with legal information to properly exercise their legal rights, led by CLEO. Steps to Justice is a collaborative project of Ontario justice sector organizations, including the courts and government, as well as the profession. So from the Steps website, people can access guided pathways for 3 areas of law: family law, housing, and wills and powers of attorney. We also have guided pathways for nonprofit corporate law, but they're not hosted on Steps. Each of these link to a list of pathways collections available for that area of law, for example, family law. So here people can select the pathways collection applicable to their situation. People then go to a start page showing which summarizes who should and shouldn't use these pathways and what information is necessary to complete them. Links to the pathways are also embedded throughout the pages of Steps to Justice. And for family law, people can also access these pathways from ontariocourtforms.ca. So this is the court services website here in Ontario where people go to get their family law court forms. For family law, we have 9 collections of guided pathways comprising 39 different guided pathways in English and French, so 78 pathways in total. The most used pathways are for simple and joint divorce, including corollary relief, but we also have pathways for filing domestic contracts with the court and applications regarding children, support and property, and separation and divorce. There are pathways for answering an application, replying to an answer, preparing the documents for the case conference, the settlement conference, bringing a motion, net family property, the forms required for net family property. And we also have pathways forthcoming very, very soon on motions to change and the trial management conference. The guided pathways for wills and powers of attorney create legal documents, of course. We have a simple will with accompanying documents and another pathway or other pathways for making a power of attorney for property or for personal care or both, and or revoking an existing power of attorney. And for housing law, the pathways help with the landlord and tenant board forms you need for a tenant application for a problem concerning rental housing. We presently have one for maintenance and repair problems and another for return of money the landlord owes. An important feature of the CLEO pathways is that people can save their information to our secure system, which is hosted at Legal Aid Ontario, so a public sector data center. From Steps to Justice, people are first prompted to log in or create an account. People can use the pathways as a guest. However, guest users are unable to save their information. They must save their work locally. If people create an account, this allows them to save partial successfully completed interviews, save their forms, or come back and complete other guided pathways as their case or situation progresses, reusing the information. Either way, people first agree to terms of use and then proceed into the guided pathway. I'm just going to sort of say a brief word about the end of the process. It looks a little different than the BC system. At the end of the pathway, people sort of conclude whatever process they're in and then are prompted to provide feedback on the pathway experience. In some instances, the user can opt to receive an email with links to their completed forms. And of course, if they've created an account, they can just log back in if they'd. And then before selecting end, and they're taken to a system landing page from which which is on our secure system, from which they can download their forms. And if they opt to download all their forms at once, they get a zip file. And it'll contain the completed forms and tip sheets. So samples of which you see here. This is an application for divorce. So they get their application. There's a schedule. There's both a short checklist and then a more detailed instructions that gets right down to what color of paper you might need when we were still filing this in paper pre-pandemic. So from the top left to right, there's a cumulative table of contents, something, the Form 6 acknowledgement of service, another court Form 6B that's required here in Ontario, and then bottom there's like a continuing record, endorsements covering page, endorsements volume 2. And for users who create an account, they can also access follow-up pathways from their dashboards. As mentioned earlier, when completing the interview, the user also has the option of entering the email address and receiving links to these follow-up, not only to their documents, but also to these follow-up pathways. And so as the user, and this is particularly pertinent for family law, but we're soon releasing some pathways for housing law where this functionality would apply as well. You'll see we have a guided pathway for almost every step of the process up to trial. And in fact, very soon we will have motions to change as well. And so if the user uses the guided pathways for, say, their application, and they come back, they wish to do a reply, they can log into the system and they can complete that information reusing all their information. Or if they completed an application and they are required to complete certain financial documents, they can use these follow-up pathways, which will again reuse any other data that's already entered, and will remember what selections were made in the relevant selections were made in the initial pathway. So speaking more generally, here at CLEO, we believe that this kind of direct-to-public automated legal tool shows tremendous promise for delivering legal information and assistance to the people who need it most. From the outset, we were determined to create tools that worked for users, that were developed from their point of view, and that earn the trust of the people who are turning to these types of tools for assistance. Our guided pathways then seek to embody 4 characteristics that we think are essential. So the first is ease of use. Second, reflective of a diversity of users. Third, robust privacy and security features. And fourth, they need to be sustainable in the long run. In terms of ease of use, Sorry, I think I just lost a slide here. Just give me 1 second. In terms of ease of use, there's a number of steps that we take to ensure that the pathways are user-centric. In a sense, we're using the technology to reduce the complexity, especially in the context of form completion, and lessen the public's reliance on experts. So complex or vague terms are replaced with plain language questions, instructions, or links to public legal information. We write simple questions built in intuitively or decision trees. The questions are embedded with public legal information presented just in time as the user needs it. We use logic to do arithmetic, other calculations, generating the necessary outputs on the forms based on answers provided by the user to those simple questions. And we attempt to reduce the number of sources of information that an individual must locate and look at by embedding or linking to external sources of information, resources such as court lists, tribunal locations, support payment calculators, and so on. And we test and we test again. We start off with student testers. We talk to the public and sort of iteratively develop these pathways as they go on. And in fact, there's very much an iterative quality to our guided pathways. The version counts on these pathways are in the hundreds. We're changing them every month as we get input from users and from stakeholders. These efforts represent, though we didn't always think of them in these terms, a functional literacy approach. A couple of thoughts in terms of building for a diversity of users. So first, the software that we use, A2J Author, was designed, it's widely used in the United States by the Access to Justice sector. We use it in conjunction with a case management system called RS Hub. But the interface, A2J Author, was designed for use by people with limited digital literacy. The user-friendly interface presented in A2J Author was the product of much usability testing with that market or demographic. Second, we support multiple entry points and aim to support the multiple entry points that people turn to for help in their communities to ensure that they know about the guided pathways and ensure that they will be referred, potential users will be referred to them. So people who experience, recognizing people who experience barriers related to literacy and digital access often are turning to not-for-profit organizations in their local communities that they trust. Our work emphasizes and does prioritize privacy principles throughout the design stage. We host in a public sector data center situated at Legal Aid Ontario, which is, of course, in Canada. And it is a recommended practice that for direct to public legal tools, especially where sensitive data is being collected, that the security of the application should be independently verified, ideally in a threat risk assessment. And in line with this recommendation, CLEO did conduct a third-party TRA to examine those risks before we went live. And finally, sustainability, of course, that means keeping up with changes in the law. So regular iterative content maintenance. Here, CLEO as a PLEA purpose organization is drawing on its networks, which are made up of people in the sector. We have, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about sort of channels we've created to hear from the people that are using tools as well and referring people to the tools. It needs to be cost effective. We did seek to minimize the resources we spent on technology in favor of content for the public, and that has enabled us to grow the collection to where it is now in the time that we've sort of had with the program to date. The A2J Author is available for free for non-commercial activity by nonprofits like CLEO, and it's widely used in the American justice sector and supported by public organizations and government. And this extensive use and institutional support and the community of programmers that's built up around it provides an assurance that the software can be counted on to exist and evolve over time. And as mentioned, again, CLEO being a PLEA purpose organization is able to leverage other content and networks and outreach to help meet some of these goals that we have for our Guided Pathways program. So while the Guided Pathways are relatively new, we have begun evaluation by tracking and responding to 4 sources of information. So usage reports, of course, public feedback, usability research that we have underway in partnership with Professor Salzan and Burkell at U Ottawa and Western, and of course feedback from the frontline workers who refer people to these tools. Now here I'm going to mostly talk with respect to the family law guided pathways, which are our first and certainly most extensive part of our pathways collection. So before we went live, we were hearing from frontline workers, people who help the public with family law problems. So these include family law information centers, mediators, service providers to the ministry here in Ontario, court staff, duty counsel, family law clinics run by Legal Aid Ontario, family court support workers, so people who are helping, so service providers to people experiencing intimate partner violence. And so these services regularly refer their clients to the guided pathways, and we hear by them from email and at sessions we conduct on the pathways at their provincial trainings and general meetings. And overall, the response has been quite positive. They now, in a sense, have something to assist certain clients where they had nothing before. So we went live with our first 3 pathways in June 2018, and I apologize, some of the data is a little dated here. So we went live with our first 3 pathways in June 2018 for simple divorce, initiating the set down and then joint. So over the following year and a half, we've released an additional 36 pathways for family law in English, and now they're all available in French as well. Now we do collect a lot of data, and there's some gaps in our understanding of that data, which we're still addressing, including sort of relationships between sessions and users. But overall, it appears that we're averaging about a 76 to 76 session completion rate. So this being the percentage of sessions where the user goes on to create the documents. We're still figuring out how many of the 24 to 25% of the people who aren't completing were properly screened out, so referred to other sources of information or processes, which is a stated goal of the pathways, saving both people and the system of justice, the harm and cost of proceeding where it is not suitable for the situation. So we don't know how many of the 24 to 25 are those folks, as opposed to people who've left just because of either lack of required information, frustration, confusion, or otherwise. Each of those, of course, being indicative of something requiring remedy, not a goal of ours. At present, we're averaging about 1,300 sessions a month. And as you can see, we are filling out a lot of family law court forms for people. So since January, we were a little late to this, admittedly. We've been asking all exiting users a 3-question survey. So what part of the pathway was most helpful? What part of the pathway was most difficult? Tell us anything else you want about the pathway. Now, so exiting users includes anyone who either completes a pathway or exits using our system prompt. So if somebody just closed the browser out of frustration, we won't get them, and we're thinking about how to reach that group at present. So between January 1st and October 15, 2020, the last time we completed a summary report, we had a little over 1,000 responses. We had about a 20% response rate. So 75% were uniformly positive, which was great, though many of them had very little detail. About 21% were positive, but either had suggestion or experienced a particular difficulty, or were entirely neutral, telling us about their case or something to that effect. And then 4 were negative, mostly with respect to technical problems. So we also invite the public to contact us by email. We say for technical support, but the emails we get provide us with a much broader perspective. Now, while they're mostly technical, we're often hearing from people, and we do hear from people who aren't users of the pathways seeking family law advice. There is a higher level of engagement with these users, which will sometimes require us to take a look at what that user has actually done. So generally, the feedback, again, by email has been quite positive. Most inquiries concern sort of account administration. However, we have identified areas of improvement from this feedback, and have changed the format. So I'm going to stop. I think I'm sort of running out of time here, Hannah. Am I?
Getting a little close, but no, that's yeah. Okay, right?
So I think, yeah. So maybe I'll just leave it at that and turn it over to Jocelyn. I'll sort of maybe leave it on the note that we are sort of striving to better understand the usability of the pathways, working with researchers at U Ottawa Western, and then another project with the Cyber Justice Laboratory at McGill. So.
No, that's great, Erik. No, and I appreciate that. I appreciate CLEO's update on their guided pathways, and what we can do after as well is just I can collect everybody's slide decks and then send them around as well. So Erik, for the missing slides, any information on them, everybody sort of can take a look on later on. So no, that's great. Thank you so much. And unfortunately, with our timing, it's always difficult to squeeze in all this great information. But Jocelyn, why don't you go ahead and take the lead on the next one here?
Sure. I'm just going to share my screen. Okay. Hopefully that's working. Everybody can see that. Thanks everybody for joining. Just going to talk today about our family guided pathway. It's our most intricate and most long-standing. We do have some other ones that have been developed or in development. So what I'm going to do is just a little live demonstration, so hopefully give you a sense of what it's like to use a pathway. I videotaped the live demonstration, so it's a little bit blurry, but hopefully you can still just follow along. So this is the homepage of our family law website. It houses both components. So we have a lot of plain language information about the law in the area of family. And it's also the gateway to our guided pathway that people can use to complete family law court forms or to make an agreement to resolve their family law issues. So these two sections are integrated. So as you'll see as we work through, there's links back to this information or information outside of the site to help people as they work their way through. So to get started, they create a free account. Again, this is simply so the system can keep track of their progress. We do have firewalls and encryption, and there's some information that we don't collect, for example, financial information. So this used to be quite a long page, but we found that people found it kind of daunting to have to answer a lot of questions about themselves, the other party, their situation, when they hadn't even entered. So now it's just email and password and they can get started. It's just me logging in. So this is the first screen that people will see when they come to the site. And you can see that we now have videos. These are fairly recent. So this is a very important step, and we're hoping the videos will help people to make the right choice as to what they want to do in the pathway. So there's a number of options. They can respond to family court forms. They can start a family law case. They can ask for interim or temporary orders. They can ask to change a parenting or support order. They can ask for help in enforcing a parenting order. They can, basically this option is to ask for an uncontested divorce, and they can make an agreement to deal with their issues. And today we're going to just go through the most common one, which is people who are starting a family law case. We added the part about no court forms have been served because we found that a lot of people were starting a case, but really a case had already been started. So we clarified that and tried to make it easier for people to understand. We also added this question, which addresses temporary or interim orders. We found that a lot of people were starting cases, but really they needed to also ask for interim or temporary orders and they didn't know that. So anybody who's starting a case sees this question and they can look at the video or read the information and decide. In our case, we're going to say, yes, we want those. Then they select their judicial center, another thing that people didn't understand. So we created a drop down with all the judicial centers in Saskatchewan, and they just pick the place closest to where they live. The next screen, they put in some of their personal information and information about the other party. This is used across all their forms, so it stops them from having to input it on every different form. So we just collect what's needed for the top of the court forms, or the header, and for the contact information at the bottom. So this is the progress screen. that is the main screen that they navigate through. So you can see it shows them where they are. This person has created an account and described their situation, and they're now about to start working on the first form that's needed for their case, which is the petition. So we first developed this site back in 2012, 2013. We really liked the TurboTax model, which being that tomorrow is tax day, kind of apt. And we don't have the millions behind us that TurboTax had, but there was two things that we wanted to duplicate in our pathway. And one of those is that the people don't actually see the court forms as they're working through. Some people are really intimidated by forms, and they might have language in them that they don't understand. So sometimes even when there's help text, people can just kind of freeze in the face of official looking forms. And the other part that we had is that we have continuous screening. So people only see the questions that apply to them. So if, for example, somebody was just looking at a court form, they might not know what parts they have to fill out and not fill out. This just takes the guesswork out of it, and the system selects for them. So now we're just going to continue to the petition questionnaire. So the first screen is always tells them what form they're creating and why. So this person is starting a case. So in Saskatchewan, you need a petition to do that. And then as we continue, we'll just see the plain language questions. Petitions have a lot of background information. So we ask these questions to fill that all in for people. This is something everybody has to answer. So their personal information, personal information of the other party, their relationship with the other party, and children of the relationship. So we can see the screening here. If any children live with either or both parties of any of their children, the court requires some information. So if they don't have any children living with them, they can just select no, carry on. If they do, they select yes, then the system will generate the questions that they need to answer to provide the information required on the petition. Petition also requires them to provide information about agreements or earlier cases. So this is the main screening page. So here they decide what they want to ask for. So we're going to ask for a divorce. We're going to ask for some parenting or custody orders and support for the children. We're going to go for the non-table amount. So you can see that there's outside links and links to information and a more information tab to help people make the right choice there as to what child support they want to ask for. And because of the screening, this person's not going to see any questions about spousal support or exclusive possession of the family home, just the ones that they've selected. So there's the divorce questions that they will have to fill out. Here's the parenting or custody questions that they have to fill out. So this is an example of a link back to the information side. So they're explaining why their proposed arrangement is in the best interest of the child. They can go back and read about that if they're wondering what the court considers. And then finally, this person will fill out the child support page because they're asking for the non-table amount, just explaining why they're asking for the non-table amount. And then because those are the only things they've asked for, then they're done with the petition questionnaire. You can see that they can update their responses if they want to go back, and they can also update their personal information with the update profile button. They can ask for help, email us for help at any time with the need some help button. And there's also, the system has generated some information specific to their situation. Because we've asked for a divorce, it's reminding them that they're going to need a marriage certificate and providing them with a link to vital statistics to order one if they've lost it. And because there's issues regarding the children, they're going to have to attend parenting after separation and divorce course and a link to register. So normally they would just continue through all these forms, just the way we did through the petition, but we're just going to go to a screen where they're already done. So here you can see where they would be once they've worked their way through all the questionnaires. So they're at the stage where they can download their package. So they just choose continue to download. It takes a minute to create their package. So here's a list of what's in their package. It has the customized instructions for serving and filing. It has the required number of copies of every form that they need. And the system has added some forms based on their answers. So it's added a financial statement because they've asked for child support in the non-table amount, a notice to the other party to file income information for that same reason, and a notice to attend parenting education because of the child support and parenting issues. So then they simply have to download. We have a reminder there that when they do print these off, they have to print them single-sided. And then next, we're going to just look at the package that a person would get. So now we're just looking at sort of the output that they would get after they've gone through the pathway. So for every form in their package, we tell them what to do with it. So some of the forms just need to be signed and dated. Some need to be completed. For example, the financial statement, as I mentioned, you don't gather that information on hand. Some forms need to be sworn. We tell them where to go to do that. And then once they've done those things with the forms, we talk them through the filing. So there's a list of every court form that they need to bring and other things they need, like a filing fee, their marriage certificate because they're asking for divorce, their certificate of attendance, parenting and separation. And then we show them how to serve. So there's a list of exactly what they need to serve. And we explain how to serve. So this will be unique to their situation. This is a petition for divorce, so it's going to have to be served in person by someone other than the person starting the case. So we give them the options there, process server, court sheriff, or another adult. We also tell them when to serve, so how far in front of any court date they need to serve, and how to prove service. So in this case, these documents have been served in person. So whoever did that's going to fill out the affidavit of personal service. If it was served by mail, there would be a different affidavit there. And finally, before the court forms themselves, we have the moving forward section. So this person has asked for interim orders. So the next thing that's going to happen in their case is they're going to have to appear in chambers. So there's a link back to some information about appearing in chambers, and also some information about if they get the orders that they asked for, how to get those orders issued so they actually are in effect. After that, there's a disclaimer and a warning. We ask people to let us look at their forms before they serve and file, just to make sure that the pathway is working properly. In front of each form, there's some instructions, and now we're seeing the actual court form. Here's the top where the information was gathered from their registration. And then there's just the standard things that are in all petitions. And as we move along here, we'll start to see the individualized information that the system has put in. So it's put in what they've asked for: divorce, custody, and support. As they go through, they've asked for divorce, so they put their grounds in. Things that they haven't asked for that don't apply will have an NA, it's property in this case. All the information they put in about their relationship and about themselves and the other party will go in these parts. And then these people asked for, this person asked for a parenting order. So the parenting order that they asked for will be in there, as well as their reasons for asking for that parenting order. And basically it just continues along like this till the end of the petition and all the other forms as well. But I think I've shown enough to give people an idea. I'm just going to briefly talk about some challenges and a very few stats that we do have. So, you know, the biggest challenge that we have is keeping it current. we don't have in-house IT at in our organization. So in the past, if we wanted to change it, we've had to hire IT people, and that's not always in the budget. So we developed a project with our web developer to create an updater, which allows us to, a layperson to update the site without having to enter code and things like that, which is going to be very essential now, because in Saskatchewan, there's all brand new family law rules of court. So we're going to be using that to update our pathway. And another challenge is the support. So it is a self-help tool, and most people work through it without any problems. We very rarely have a question about a question. If even one or two or three people are getting a question wrong when I'm looking at their forms or asking about it, then we'll go in and reword that question, add some help text. And we have been able to address some issues with questions like that, and then we no longer get those questions. Support we provide is just one of sort of the many things that we do in any given day. So we're hoping that the bill will also help people. Some people, aren't reading something, just doesn't help them understand. And we've also created some standard answers to the questions, so we don't have to rewrite everything if it's something we've dealt with before. So we usually get about 40 emails a month. A lot of those are just asking us to review their forms because we asked them to do that. And it really varies, but we have usually about 100 new users a month. Since it launched in 2015, we've had 5,940 accounts created. That says at the end of 2020. And we do have a survey that people take after the agreement, and we'll be inserting some more evaluation information. But right now we have some stats on the information side where we do ask people if it's helpful. And about 92% of the people find the information helpful. And that's it for me.
Thank you so much, Jocelyn. I really appreciate it. I know we went a little bit over time today, but that happens, and that's sort of the beauty of online programming. I understand that we have a few people who have obviously had to go to other meetings and other sort of engagements, of course, but this entire webinar will be posted online. We would not have necessarily questions like I mentioned in the chat here for questions, but please feel free to email me with any questions that you may have, comments or other feedback. I really appreciate that. If you have anything, obviously we're open to receiving it. I want to thank our speakers today. Thank you so much for these incredibly informative presentations. And I already mentioned that the link will be posted both on our website a few times as well as in an email. If you're interested in connecting in particular with our panelists, please feel free again to send me an email, and I am happy to connect you directly in that case, other than just to go through me with certain questions and answers. But we do have another webinar I just want to mention scheduled for the end of May, so do stay tuned for that as well. You will hear from me again. Otherwise, have a great rest of your week and stay safe, everyone. Thank you, Joel, for the lovely comment in the chat. Really appreciated. And that's it. That's it for today. Stay safe, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.